on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
I just watched this man scratch his back for like 10 minutes with a plastic coat hanger before we could start.
That's right. You married this.
Oh, what was I thinking?
Na 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 boo boo, she chose me. Yeah. What's up?
Do I have time to amend that decision?
Nope.
No?
No
Okay.
redo, no takebacks.
Okay, well, here we are.
You love it.
Heading into the first week of May, Dylan. Time flies when you're podcasting and talking about all the true crime cases.
Man, I must say this hyperinflation that is affecting everyone has really got the year flying by.
It sure does.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have to work extra to buy groceries and gas.
It's a lot.
No, but we hope everyone's doing as well as they can be out there.
Hanging in there.
And the Ethernets. And Heather has a really incredible story for us today.
This case has been suggested by a few people. And this entire month of May, we will be in the state of Virginia discussing true crime cases. This has been on my list for a while. Now is the time, Dylan, that we get into this story. It is a very sad story. Of course, we rarely discuss a case that is not just completely tragic. But this one definitely is just a really tough case to talk about.
Wow, yes, it is definitely, like you said, a hard case to describe, and it actually opens up a mysterious can of worms of sorts for the region. But I must stop you there for 1 second and thank today's host of this episode.
Today's host, you
Yeah.
meant sponsor.
Oh, I'm sorry. She can just leave that in. You sound how goofy I am. Today's sponsor of Mountain Murders is Heather.
Our brand new patron.
Yes, that's our brand new patron, and she's got my wife's name.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Heather, and thank you to all the other patrons.
Heathers are the coolest.
Heathers have come back into style.
Just gonna say.
You know what I'm saying?
We were never out of style.
Well, that's true.
We are trendsetters.
You dominated the 90s.
We start the style, okay?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Heather.
Okay. Are you ready to get into today's case, Dylan? We don't have time to dilly-dally.
We do not.
You've already scratched your back for 10 minutes with this hanger.
It was a necessity.
It's time to get to work.
Let's dive straight in.
Most of us go through our daily lives taking for granted the hug, smile, or phone call that we get could be our last time that we lay eyes on someone we love. None of us imagine that it could potentially be the final moments. There are thousands of missing children and teenagers, yet the majority of us, especially parents, think it couldn't happen to our kids.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that you never realize how big of a deal or how scary it is until after the fact, when you realize that really truly was your last moments with your loved one.
Unfortunately, many children are not reported missing, so there is no reliable way to determine the exact number of children missing in the United States. According to the FBI, in 2021, there were 337,195 entries into the FBI's Crime Information Center database, known as NCIC. The threats our kids face is always evolving. The notion of a stranger grabbing a child off the streets occupies a prominent place in our fears, but that is not always the case. Around 1% of all missing children and teenagers are actually taken by strangers.
I'm sorry, 100%?
Yes.
So most of the time is someone known to the child.
Yes.
Family member, family friend.
Yeah, a lot of these abductions are familial abductions.
Typically, like a relationship, a divorce, a custodial issue.
Exactly, Dylan. But today's case will detail the worst possible outcome for one Virginia family and their fight for justice. Cases like this occupy vast amount of police time and leave lasting scars on the victims' families and communities. Alexis Tierra Murphy was born June 5th, 1996, in Charlottesville, Virginia, to parents Laura Murphy and Troy Brown. She had 3 brothers, Avery, Cameron, and Noah, and by all accounts, Dylan, she was like a very loving sister. I'm sure at times her brothers probably got on her nerves a little bit, but for the most part, she really was like family oriented. But Alexis was lucky to have a very loving, extended, close-knit family as well. As a little girl, her cousin Jasmine Murphy stated, Alexis was always getting into stuff. So like a precocious kind of kid. She grew up around a lot of cousins, which were more like her brothers and sisters than distant relatives.
So you got this big family, tight knit. Sounds like they're happy, right?
Oh yeah, a lot of love, a lot of laughs, growing up together, kind of all living within a close distance where they're able to spend like a lot of quality time together. And you see this a lot, especially in the South. Of course, I'm sure other areas, kind of have this as well, but I know growing up in the South, you have a lot of those big families, big extended families, and your cousins are like your siblings growing up.
Well, you take a big piece of family land that's been in the family's possession for 100, 150 years or more sometimes. And then, everyone gets their little piece of land, all the brothers and sisters for a couple of generations. And they can all have homes on said land, up a road and past 7 or 8 different, family members' households.
It's true.
Yeah.
Alexis has been described as bubbly, funny, and beautiful. A young woman who was wise beyond her years. In 2013, Alexis was living in the small enclave of Shipman, Virginia, attending Nelson County High School where she played volleyball. The athletic young woman was a standout player. She was captain of the volleyball team with ambitions to play at the collegiate level. The teenager was into fashion, beauty. She loved Starbucks and Kendrick Lamar. Alexis was signed up for honors courses her senior year, which shows she was an intelligent, dedicated student. Alexis's great aunt, Trina Murphy, told Oxygen's Final Moments that Alexis could brighten your worst day. She was a total package, according to her aunt.
Well, I was going to say, not only is she happy, funny, fun to be around, she's also, not just an athlete, but a standout captain, which means the rest of the team respects her. She's mature, likely, and also very smart. And so sounds like the total package.
And not only was she stunning, I mean, this girl was gorgeous.
She's purty too.
She is beautiful.
Wow.
Absolutely beautiful girl, but also humble.
Wow. Dang, can you get a mold and make make other young people after Alexis?
Shipman is a small area with a population of around 500 at the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains, around 75 miles northeast of Richmond, Virginia. It is located in an area between Charlottesville, where the University of Virginia is located, and historic Lynchburg. Not only was Alexis a popular athlete, she was an active Twitter user with a social media following of around 11,000. Like most teenagers, and many adults, she was attached to her phone. She would often plug her dying cell phone into an extension cord so she could still walk around the house while charging it and using the phone.
That's a pretty good idea.
In a typical day, Alexis might send out 40 or 50 tweets. The young woman loved to dance and would often record herself dancing around the house. On August 3rd of 2013, Alexis Murphy worked at a new Charlottesville business called Kid to Kid. She returned to her home in Shipman. Alexis's mother, Laura, was working a night shift at her postal service job and had to leave the house around 6 p.m. Alexis asked her mother for some money to buy hair extensions. The 17-year-old had senior portraits coming up and wanted to get her hair done for the photos. Her appointment was a few days out, but the young woman wanted to be prepared for this photo shoot. I mean, who doesn't want to look their best in their senior pictures?
Wow, I would say 11,000 followers back in
13.
2013 was more like 100,000 plus nowadays, right?
Yeah, I mean, people have called her an influencer.
Yeah, that was quite a bit earlier on in what our social media has evolved to. So very early on, she already had a lot of fans, it sounds like.
She did. Now, most salons, Dylan, I know you probably don't understand the beauty secrets,
I'm an expert on salons.
so I'm going to lay this on you, okay? In case you need to get your hair did.
Okay.
Most salons don't offer extensions, so typically a client has to bring their own hair.
Oh, so they will do them, but you must provide your own extensions.
Exactly.
Okay.
Shipman was such a small town, there was no place to pick up the hair that Alexis wanted, so she needed to drive to nearby Lynchburg. Laura gave her daughter the money and left for work. Alexis's grandmother lived with the family and was usually there in the evenings to look after Alexis and her brothers. But the 17-year-old had a curfew of midnight, which she always adhered to. The drive to Lynchburg was around 35 minutes. Driving her father's white 2003 Nissan Maxima, the young woman set out for a shopping trip. She was wearing a red top and a pair of leopard print pants. Alexis set out tweeting, "Berg bound." A few minutes after this, she sent out a tweet that said, "If you don't like what you see, then don't look." A cryptic message. Did something happen to make Alexis feel this way, or was this just like a random thought? A few minutes after that tweet, she wrote, "I actually look cute right now."
Okay. So it seems like maybe she is having random thoughts, right? Kind of all over the place. And but I guess it very well could have been maybe someone was mean mugging her in traffic or something to that degree. Yeah, I guess there's quite a few possibilities.
Around 7 or 7:15 that evening, Alexis went into the Liberty gas station in Lovingston, Virginia, which is also in Nelson County. Like Shipman, it's an incredibly small town with a population of just around 500. The actress Leslie Bibb is from Lovingston, and so is singer Jimmy Fortune from the Statler Brothers.
Oh, wow.
I thought that was an interesting claim to fame, being such a small town.
That is that is just a big community.
And Leslie Bibb is fucking hilarious. If you remember the movie Talladega Nights, she plays Ricky Bobby's wife.
Oh, wow.
Will
Okay.
Ferrell's wife.
Yeah, she is hilarious.
Yeah, she's a pretty funny actress. And then, of course, the Statler Brothers are a pretty famous country band.
I'm sure people have heard of them.
Yeah, okay. So from what I understand, the Liberty gas station was a place where a lot of young people would hang out and loiter because there wasn't a whole lot going on in the area.
No, I lived in an area probably rather similar to size of this place back in the day, Bobby, Tennessee. There was literally
What's it called?
Bobby.
Where the hell is that?
B-Y.
I've never even heard of Bybee, Tennessee.
Bybee.
Okay.
Okay, the schoolhouse had K through 12, one room for every grade. Yep. And if one person missed the football game, we'd have to forfeit because we only had 11 people to play. So, I mean, it's one of those places. And they had a convenience store, and it's like a yellow, caution light, and that's about everything in town.
Okay, where is Bybee located?
Oh.
Because I don't even know where this is in Tennessee.
Well, you continue. I will tell you.
Is it kind of like outside of? I know you've lived in Sevierville for a bit. Is
Yeah,
it
you're
in
talking.
that area, or
Yes.
someplace different.
Well, now that you've said that, I think it's near Morristown.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a town that's very small, but maybe not quite this small. I mean, it sounds like this area of Nelson County, there's not really a bowling alley, there's not a movie theater. So where do kids go? Now, growing up in my small town, Dylan, we had a place people called the Plaza, and it was a bit of a shopping center with a big parking lot. And kids would drive around in a circle in this parking lot, cruising.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think every smaller community, especially, well, you have your cruising spots in every town, big or small.
Everybody would cruise the plaza.
So to see that I'm not lying, you see the road intersecting there at near this American Diner.
Paul's Diner.
This is Bobby, Tennessee, and
It's in Cott County. Okay.
yes, and today it has around 1,600 people. Okay, so I could imagine. We've said this before. This is one of those tiny communities. Everyone literally knows everyone. If they don't know you directly, they know someone who knows you. Or, people know who your parents are. So, yeah, it's one of those kinds of places.
So when you lived in Bybee, were folks hanging out at the gas station?
Well, yeah, what are you going to do? You always get the old timers there in the morning
Oh, yeah.
who drink coffee and never leave, which is cool. I mean, I love to hear the old timers talk. And a lot of these places will have the liars bench out front,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And they will be
Gotta have
piled
a
up there
liar's
telling
bench.
their stories about farming or hunting
The
or fishing.
big fish they caught.
The huge fish they caught.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, in my town, we was cruising the plaza right in front of the Sky City. So
This is like a big city
yeah,
compared to Bobby.
So I get it. Now, this particular gas station, Dylan, had a McDonald's attached to it. So a lot of young people would meet up there with friends, and Alexis went to that gas station nearly every day. Whether it was to just hang out at the McDonald's, pick up a snack, whatever, pop off for gas, it was the place to be.
So basically everyone in town would come through there at some point.
At some point, exactly. In the early morning hours of Sunday, August 4th, Alexis's grandmother notices that she's not made it home yet. Now, Alexis never missed curfew. She was a girl who was always on time, punctual, and if she was going to be a few minutes late, she definitely phoned home to let someone know she was heading home.
Well, I don't think you could accomplish all the things that she does without being responsible and mature.
No, it sounds like Alexis was just a good girl.
Yes.
A really good girl. Now, her grandmother tries the girl's cell phone but gets no response. She then called Mom, Laura, at work. Laura, worried, calls her partner, Troy, Alexis's dad. And from what I understand, he was working out of town at the time. He traveled a lot for work. I don't know exactly what his job was, but he would be gone out of town quite a bit. So after multiple attempts to call Alexis's cell phone, which was going straight to voicemail, in a panic, Troy told them to immediately call police. She's never done this before. And for a young woman always tapped into her phone, this is worrisome for her parents. First thoughts included that maybe Alexis had a car accident
Well, that's a good possibility.
on her way back from Lynchburg.
Yeah, when you have someone who is constantly on their phone, for whatever reason, every time you call and they pick up on first, second ring, you text them, they text you right back. You can have a full-on conversation, text them back and forth. It is kind of in the back of your mind when you do call them or leave a voicemail and you haven't heard from them in 30 minutes, an hour, it's almost instantly worrisome because you know this person's habits.
Well, that is kind of our relationship. We are in constant contact.
It's true.
Like I'm always available when you call or text, and most of the time you are, right? But there have been a few rare occasions where perhaps we were not able to reach each other. And I know that I instantly kind of panic, like, is everything okay?
Well, we both do. If it goes more than, I say, an hour and a half when someone may be napping or something, or I get really busy at work and can't, be near my phone, I automatically get worried about you, and I know you do the same. So I think that's a natural reaction just because it happens that fast because you know this person's habits so good.
Exactly.
Right.
When Laura left work Sunday morning, she went to the Nelson County Sheriff's Office to file a missing persons report on her daughter. A lieutenant named Billy Mays Jr. was contacted by a deputy with the department regarding the disappearance of Alexis. By this time, deputies had been able to get a lot of information from the Murphy family, so Mays had a decent head start for working the case. Teenagers a lot of time are secretive about their whereabouts or what they're doing. So often law enforcement does not really take into I guess, consideration when they're investigating a missing teenager or adult. They do take that into consideration. I'm sorry. That there is the possibility that this kid is doing something maybe they weren't supposed to be doing. They went to a party, like, that something has kind of come up to keep this kid from being in contact with their parents. Could she be with someone that she didn't want her parents to know about? That kind of thing. But the investigator has to exhaust all avenues. Mays is soon concerned when he learns about Alexis's large Twitter following. As we all know, a downside to social media is that it is a breeding ground for predators.
Well, yeah, just assholes, period. But it certainly gives someone the ability, if they are some kind of stalker or developing some type of obsession, almost constant contact with you. And not only that, which is, it really is a bad habit. It's dangerous, constantly posting where you're going or where you're going to be at.
Yeah,
and
like
when you're going to be there.
Specifically, I know, like on Facebook and Instagram and, well, even Twitter, you can share your location.
Yeah.
You can tag like a restaurant or a store, parks, various places where you might be. So if you're posting a photo, you're like, I'm tagging it, I'm at this place. If someone was stalking you or a predator, they could easily find you.
Now, imagine, the technology helps us in so many ways nowadays, a lot we don't even realize. But just imagine the tool that it has become for someone who is a stalker or with some type of obsession for pedophiles, child predators, to reach out and make contact with your children. Back before the internet and computers, short of, I don't even know if you could do it randomly calling a phone, that's not going to work. You had no way to reach out and make contact with people. Some weird, creepy ass dude, trying to talk to your kid around the corner or something, was just likely not going to happen as often. But now, they can reach out in so many ways.
Well, that's why I mentioned at the beginning of the story, these situations that our children face are constantly evolving. As more social media develops, different technology, it's scary.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the, we're all true crime fans, one of the more important things to discuss with children is not just don't take candy from a stranger, there's that whole thing, but let them discuss techniques that predators use in simple terms they can understand without getting too graphic. The grooming. If someone acts like your buddy, like they're interested in what you're doing and telling you, oh, your drawings are cool or whatever hobby you are, you're really good at that. They're getting in on your good side, and this can slowly lead into other things or stronger relationships or where they trust them, and then they may attempt to actually meet them behind their parents' back for some reason. So if you just simply describe that technique a predator or horrible person uses to your children in clear terms, they can help. You have to educate. That's the best tool you can give them.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable and often unpleasant discussion to have, but it's important.
They may be like, wait a second, this feels or kind of feels a lot like what my mom and dad were telling me that bad people do, and it would just make them smart and savvy, internet users.
The drive to Lynchburg is along Route 29. Investigators contacted the store where Alexis was going to buy hair, but the clerk did not see the young woman on Saturday evening. It appears she never made it to Lynchburg, or at least not to that particular beauty supply store. So now investigators are asking, why did she deviate from the plan? It is not until Monday, August the 5th, that the FBI and Virginia State Police now join the search. To track her down, Billy Mays, Jr., the detective, subpoenas her cell phone records. While he waits, her family uses the Find My Phone locator, which is common on Apple iPhones. Oak Ridge Estates is the last location where her phone pinged. It's a vast chunk of property with several thousand acres.
Wow.
A huge gathering of people, including law enforcement, search her property for her phone, but they don't have any luck, Dylan. And so by 6:30, a state helicopter is in the air. FBI agents are on the scene by 7 p.m.
Now, say this was your family. being looked for. Would that be even more red flags if the last location of their phone or electronic device was this kind of large, wild piece of property? Because I think that would personally disturb me to a degree.
I would be concerned. Now, it sounds like this is a bit of a housing development.
Okay, so
but
it is developed.
But like not what you would consider like a normal subdivision where the houses are right on top of each other.
Okay.
This sounds like one of those more rural subdivisions where you have a lot of acreage, but the houses are spread out.
Okay, so maybe houses have like 10-acre lots instead of quarter-acre lots or something like that.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but just the information that I gathered through research, it seems like it's one of those subdivisions, this estate property that's just massive.
Okay.
But the houses maybe are not like right on top of each other. So there's still a lot of maybe undeveloped parts of this estate, wooded areas, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's not like a national park or greenway setting.
Not
Okay.
like that.
Okay, that's an important clarification. Thank you.
So Lieutenant Mays realizes time is of the essence in this case. And as we know, Dylan, with any missing persons case, that first like 24 to 48 hours are so important. I mean, that is when you're going to get eyewitnesses. Events would be fresh in someone's mind.
Right. Yes, definitely. Now, I must ask you, because my brain won't stop thinking about it until I ask you. Have you heard the name Billy Mays before?
Yeah.
It's the OxyClean guy.
I know.
He was a very accomplished salesperson who died under somewhat mysterious conditions on an airplane.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What
Yes, I
happened?
believe it was said to be a heart attack, but then they said he had cocaine, but just some of the descriptions, I may be wrong on this.
Is he the guy that, didn't he have like a ponytail and like a beard?
Yes.
Or am I thinking of the gazelle, or the guy with the gazelle, the weight machine, like the exercise
Oh, that
machine?
you might be thinking about him, but he does have a full dark black beard.
Okay.
And at some point he may have had a tiny ponytail.
Okay.
But oh my God, I can so see the face of the other guy
He
you're
was
talking about.
like a staple of what are those called? Those paid commercial
Made on TV.
infomercials.
Yes, infomercials. I would argue
Yes.
he was one at the forefront of it, turning into just this juggernaut of sales.
Just an infomercial star.
Yeah, him, ShamWow guy, those guys.
That ShamWow guy now, he is a case of fucked up.
He is. Okay, sorry for the
Okay.
sidetrack. I had to get that out of my ADHD brain.
So Lieutenant Mays, I mean, he realizes like the minutes are ticking. We've got to get this in gear, the search, figure something out. So after further discussions with Alexis's family, he realizes that it's pretty unlikely that the young woman has ran away or voluntarily vanished.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, because we hear this time and again, cops, and I know they can't take every single phone call and you know, make a task force and take everyone and look for this person, because they do get a lot who are either people who are just, you know, off the grid for a minute, or someone who's arguing with each other, or any of that, and they really aren't missing. They just don't, you know, they're doing what they want to do for the moment or whatever.
Well, I think so often we heard in the 70s, the 80s, maybe even into the 90s, these law enforcement agencies that would not take missing persons, especially when it was teenagers, very seriously. They were just all runaways.
Yes,
right?
every time.
But I think the more we progress, the more we understand true crime, missing persons cases, I think law enforcement does look at these young folks and say, you know, they don't have a history of this type of behavior.
There you go.
Their family and friends are saying this is completely out of character. This is completely not in their wheelhouse to just take off. And they do take these cases a bit more seriously than perhaps they did 20, 30 years ago.
I mean, you could literally have like a 5-question questionnaire, and if they answer, you know, so many yeses on these, okay, this is different. And it wouldn't be that hard to come up with the questions. You named 2 or 3 of them just now.
Yeah, and I think Lieutenant Mays pretty quickly realized, you know, she's a star athlete. She's a great student. She's not a bad kid. She does not have a history of running away.
She's not off with her boyfriend.
Something has happened to this young woman.
Okay, so yeah, so he is trying to get this going as quickly as possible to figure out what's happened to her.
He definitely is. Now, law enforcement need to move forward under the guise that she was likely taken by someone or something sinister is at play. The next day, the FBI issues a statewide bulletin for her. It is also when that white 2003 Nissan Maxima is discovered in the parking lot of a Carmike 6 theater in Albemarle County between 8 and 9 p.m. Dylan, this theater is in Charlottesburg, which is in the opposite direction of Lynchburg. So if you're looking at a map, there's Lynchburg, Charlottesville. She lives kind of like right in the middle of these two cities.
Okay.
Right? So this is very strange for her family, for law enforcement. Again, what would make her deviate from this plan? Did she go to Lynchburg and then drive all the way to Charlottesville to go to a movie?
So it's that
It kind of didn't make sense.
it's that far out of the way. Any normal plan being modified or things changing for you likely would not lead you that far off of your path.
No.
It's like the opposite direction.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's very strange.
Well, the car is taken in for processing. Canine units collected a scent from the car that took them to Arden Place Apartments. Police take a look at the apartment complex, but they don't limit their search to this particular area. The police are still focusing on about a 30-mile radius around Lovingston along Route 29 with about 50 searchers on the ground. Investigators are able to collect some surveillance videos. Footage from the Liberty gas station shows Alexis inside the store, and nothing seems out of place. There is, however, a white male in his 40s with a noticeable neck tattoo who holds the door for the young woman as she's leaving the store. The cashier tells police the pair left at the same time and were seen talking in the parking lot briefly. However, the surveillance camera from the theater is mostly useless. It's grainy and investigators can't make out the car's driver. The timestamp shows the car pulling into the movie lot about 25 hours after Alexis was last seen at this gas station.
25 hours.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
A figure can be seen exiting the car and walking off into the darkness. Investigators' biggest fear was that the young woman might be in the car's trunk. But fortunately, she was not.
I think that's oftentimes that they think that that's a good possibility. So, but one thing you do know is this was likely not Alexis driving her car, because who parks their car at a theater and walks away and doesn't come back? I mean, that's very strange as well.
Well, it's very odd, indeed. Now, from what I gathered, Dylan, there was little forensic evidence inside the car. Alexis's family did not believe the person leaving the car was Alexis because she was afraid of the dark. And they couldn't imagine her just walking away from this vehicle in the dead of night alone without a flashlight, without a person, to accompany her in a city like Charlottesville.
Almost scurrying back off into the dark as quickly as possible. This is not something Alexis would do.
No. And the person's identity is unknown, and it's hard to make out if it was a man, a woman, their age. I mean, nothing. It was just like a grainy, dark figure on this security footage.
Man, how many cases could have been solved a lot faster if we could just take like 4K cameras back in the day and just install them in all these places?
Right.
Gosh, I mean, even to this day, some convenience stores still have like that 1990s camera set up where you can't hardly tell anything that's going on.
My favorite are the fake cameras that are set up, and it's obvious they're fake. There's like no cord, or the cord's just hanging, like it's not even plugged in, and there's no light or anything on the camera, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a nice prop.
That's not real.
You're not fooling me.
That damned old camera ain't real no way. You can't see me back here putting these old twisted tees down my pants.
I'm putting this can of Vienna sausages in my pocket.
That's right.
Or as my mama called them, Vienies.
Don't forget the saltines.
Vienies. Oh my God, my mama loved those. Vienna sausages and saltines.
Oh yeah, that is some of the veteran snacks right there.
Country folks staple.
You just smash it between there, and the real art of it is to not crack the saltines. You kind of hold it in the middle and get that Wiener to smash out on both crackers.
The Wiener.
Yes.
Okay, back to our story. In the meantime, Nelson County is rocked by Alexis's disappearance. And I don't mean like rocked, Dylan. They are shaken to their core. A candlelight vigil is held at the high school football field. Students at Nelson County High School are absolutely distraught by their friend's disappearance. Ella Wiggins, a resident, told NBC 29, quote, "A small town and you just don't think somebody will go missing. It touches everyone that's got kids and touched people to feel for her parents and her family." With little to go on, and they still don't have her cell phone. They have not gotten her cell phone records. So at this point, I mean, they're just kind of grasping at straws. The FBI takes the search to the national level, Dylan. At a news conference, Alexis's family makes a plea for her safe returns and sends her a message. They say, "Alexis, if you're out there and you can hear us, just know that your family loves you," said Trina Murphy, which was Alexis's aunt. This is just heartbreaking.
Oh, it is. Every time you see any family do this, and right in the midst of their very, very new grief, and they're very distraught. But, I wonder if there's ever a case of an assailant seeing pleas of the family and say that they are holding captive someone and releasing them back to them. That's interesting. I may look that up.
Her family is desperate for answers, and Alexis becomes everybody's daughter, everybody's niece. I mean, the whole community is looking at her like, this is our child. We have to find her. Laura Murphy is convinced that somebody knows something. She even asks for the littlest piece of information, hoping it will lead to her daughter. In this particular area, there is a tremendous amount of woods and forests to search because the area is at the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains, so any searches on foot are exhaustive and difficult. Some of the terrain is rough. The whole community, it seems, has mobilized, and volunteers are coordinating searches around these treacherous places. Law enforcement begins taking a closer look at the road where Alexis would travel, Route 29. In recent years, the corridor has had a rash of serious crimes, including around 32 missing men and women.
Wow.
Serial killer Mark Evenitz, which we covered last year. If you haven't listened to that case, I recommend downloading it. He was known to cruise this area. Several bodies of missing women have turned up along the roadside. Locals dubbed this person the 29 Stalker. From Albemarle to Barbersville, several young women had been abducted.
Yes, this is very, the Route 29 Stalker, the Route 29 Killer. I mean, it could easily be an entire episode itself.
You have more information about this, don't you, Dylan?
Yes, I have a little bit of information. So, well, for one thing, police think he is unknown to this day, but they do believe because of witness accounts, there's so many witnesses in this, that he was using an alias known as Larry Breeden. Okay? Because one woman actually escaped from the clutches of the I-29 Stalker. Or, I'm sorry, the Route 29 Stalker. Broke her ankle. Sounds to me like she jumped out of a moving car.
Okay.
And later testified and actually identified someone else, Daryl Rice, as her attacker. As when she was saying, this is the Route 29 attacker. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. 5 women in 5 years had disappeared along Route 29 corridor, also known as the Seminole Trail. Route 29 is a major north-south road that covers around 248 miles from the NC border to the Washington, D.C. So essentially, it bisects Virginia into an eastern and western half, almost in the middle of the state. And part of it is 2-lane, part of it is 4-lane, which if you think about that would be kind of a great trail for a stalker or killer to travel along.
Definitely.
Kind of blending in, and then there's the pull-offs to get into, rural parts of the counties and things like that. And there was also up to 20 women who claim a man in a blue pickup truck would try to pull them over. And what he would do is he would come alongside you and be like, "Oh no, your tire," or pointing at the back of your car like something's wrong. And then he would get them to pull over. And some of them, he just took them to a payphone and left them. No incident. But some of the women, he would like if they ignored him, he would get very agitated and kind of stalk off. And this is the same exact method that the woman who did escape fell victim to. She pulled over. He said, "I'll give you a ride," and he did. And then he assaulted her. And but she did break. She would manage to escape. And what is interesting to me, this pisses me off as usual. Daryl Rice was later convicted of her attack, and he was given 11 months after pleading guilty to lesser charges. So you're going to plead guilty to lesser charges of kidnapping, attempted murder, I'm sure, attempted sexual assault at the very least, which disgusts me. They should never let those be pled down. And he was a prime suspect of two other hikers, the murder of two other hikers as well.
Is that the one in the Shenandoah Valley, the Julian Lawley case?
Yes.
Because we discussed that previously on an episode as well.
Yes,
and that name was familiar. I was like, wait a minute, I think he was a suspect in that case.
And there's much more. There's other suspects that could have been the Route 29 killer, according to investigators over the years, and I'm sure Heather may get into more of that, maybe. But it's a lot of trouble along this not that big of an area,
well,
if you think about it.
240 miles.
Right.
I mean, that is a bit of a distance, but we're not talking about like I-95 or I-40 that runs across the country.
It's not hundreds of miles. It's not even 300 miles.
Exactly.
You know, these are distances that people in a region would travel to go, see other parts of the region or maybe go to another town for some reason. So it's really not that huge of an area if you really think about it.
Dylan, when you were talking about this fella, like flagging people, specifically women, over about their vehicle, it reminded me of a true crime story I heard on a podcast. I believe it might have been Cold Case Files, but it was an older story. And of course, I can't remember the fella's name, but that's how he was getting victims. And oftentimes he would ram their car.
Well, there's that move.
Even just slightly bump their vehicle so that they would have to get out. And it was usually at an exit ramp, something like that. They would get out of the car, and then that's when he would abduct them.
Yeah, and you have people that impersonate police or authority. And so remember, to this day, allegedly, the universal sign of, "I see you, but I'm going to drive to a lit area before I pull over where there's people around," is to slow down, turn your hazard lights on, and proceed on off the road, off the interstate, out of the woods, maybe to a convenience store or an intersection before you pull over, because you never know. You just never know in some of these instances is if this is really a genuine issue or if it's someone trying to get you to stop.
Especially at night.
Exactly.
I mean, I would tell all of our female listeners, if you are out driving, it is late at night, and you are in an area where it is not well lit or not a public place, I would wait to pull over for an officer.
Well, and that's the same if someone taps me, and this kind of, let's say it's an interstate exit, a lot of exits, there's nothing around, maybe farmland or there's just nothing. And someone bumps you and you're feeling weird about it, drive off. You know what I'm saying? The worst that could happen is you got a little bit of damage on your car that didn't get paid for. Especially if it's a slight tap or something, likely there's not even a scratch.
Which is not worth your life.
It is not worth your life. And if you're feeling weird about it, err on the side of caution and just simply drive away.
Follow your gut instinct.
Please do.
Because almost 100% of the time, it's on point.
It's true. So, so there's some very interesting stories. And there's more. There's more people, more suspects, more murders. But I certainly don't have the time to get into all that now. But it's
Dylan, we have all the time in the world.
It's very interesting.
It is. Maybe we will dedicate an episode specifically to the Route 29 stalker.
I would like to see you put that together because of the way you lay out your stories, and you would do an incredible job because
thank you, Dylan.
No, there really is a lot of information, and it's kind of hard to process.
It's a lot to condense.
Yes, because multiple people have been convicted of some of these murders years later in some cases, and it really makes you wonder if they really did that, So, but in the case of, I must say, in the case of Mr. Rice, Daryl Rice, his father lived in the area of this Route 29, where all the action's at, and his father also had a pickup truck very similar to a truck described by multiple witnesses as having been seen with women or having come up behind them and tried this same scenario. So that's kind of interesting.
Whoa.
I guess the outside possible chance and also his geographical location to the area where he lived and was known to work. So I guess there's outside possibility maybe they did catch the Route 29 killer and just don't know it.
Well, the next day, officials release images of Alexis from the surveillance video at the gas station, the Liberty gas station. Law enforcement officials hope someone might be able to identify the man in the gas station video. The man was also seen driving a camouflage Chevy Suburban. Film showed Alexis following his vehicle, like, kind of behind. Like, he's driving, she pulls out behind him as if she's following behind him. So suddenly police might have something to work with. They finally asked the cashier about the man on the video seen with Alexis, and the clerk's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. His name's Randy Taylor.
Randy Taylor. Yes, Randy Taylor. Very interesting.
Taylor was a 48-year-old man who lived in Lovingston. He has a distinctive looking, he's a pretty distinctive looking guy, first of all, okay? But he also has this large Daffy Duck tattoo on his neck.
Ah, the obvious neck tattoo.
Randy's camo truck was also recognizable because how many times do you see a camo vehicle, especially something as big as like a Chevy Suburban?
Yeah, and these are typically home do-it-yourself jobs.
Yeah.
I think we've all seen the pattern, where you mix the greens and blacks and browns together.
Yeah, I mean, they're around in our area. There's a guy who has like an old military blazer, and it has that pattern, and I see it quite a bit because it reminds me of my son's dad had one just like that for some years when we were together. And I always think, is that him? Because I know he sold, his blazer, but you don't see that quite a bit. So when you do, it sticks out.
No, in any area where you people may be like, wow, does he just love camouflage? But actually has a practical element to it in an area where you have a lot of hunters.
Exactly.
They take these big vehicles, trucks, whatnot, off in trails, up logging roads, and things like that.
Bear hunters.
Yeah, so it could have a practical application, but at the same time, it certainly stands out.
Definitely. So now law enforcement is left to wonder why Murphy changed her plans. On the video, she's seen heading north, seemingly following behind Taylor. Randy Taylor lives in a camper off Route 29. The land is overgrown to the point it takes over an old house. So you can imagine what this looks like.
Yeah, it looks
Tall,
probably
weeds, brush.
it probably looks abandoned.
Exactly. His blue and white camper is on that land, but it's difficult to locate because the grass is so high. It looks like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah, Randy's not going to waste his time mowing grass and manicuring his lawn. I mean, come on, he has to touch up the camo paint job on his Suburban.
He has to rub some delicious cocoa butter into that Daffy Duck tattoo.
And he needs to keep Daffy bright and vibrant.
I just have to say, Randy Taylor, I mean, I know it's mean to make fun of people's looks. They can't really help it, but he just looks like a bug-eyed freak.
Oh.
I'm just going to say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to say it, but, is this what helps kind of create, because a lot of your creepy killer guys, guess what? They look like creeps.
He looks like a creep.
They're odd looking.
And he has these really big, like, sort of bug eyes. And he looks like a weirdo.
Right.
Like, if he tried to talk to me in a store or a gas station, I would just be like, no.
Yeah, and you got to wonder if oftentimes maybe they don't have a lot of luck with the ladies, or they're, kind of have a great personality on top of these kind of odd looks. And, and is this what actually pushes or kind of is one more piece of the puzzle to make them some type of a
He
monster?
reminds me a little bit of, like, Steve Buscemi.
Okay, I got the look.
Right?
Yeah.
But, like, at least Steve Buscemi is, like, funny and talented.
Well, and he's also, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, when he was younger, he wasn't, he was a little bit more handsome.
Maybe a little bit.
He's aging in a certain way. Let's say that.
Yeah.
He's a great actor.
I fucking love him. Boardwalk Empire.
I just really feel like he'd be a good
Ghost
person
World.
if you met him in real life, too.
He's funny as hell. Reservoir Dogs.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Murphy's shattered cell phone is still missing at this point. But the cell phone might help better locate her. But until detectives can get these records and all the necessary things they need to be able to access her cell phone information, they have to look at all leads. Investigator Mays and others knock on Taylor's door and they ask about Alexis Murphy. He tells police he does not recognize the young woman in the photograph that they show him and denies being at the Liberty gas station. Now, Taylor's criminal record dated back more than 20 years. In 1992, he was convicted of burglary and grand larceny. Taylor was given a 10-year sentence with all but 4.5 years suspended. He was convicted of arson in February of 2005 in Albemarle County, Virginia, and ordered to pay $6,300 in restitution along with being on probation. He failed to pay the money and his suspended sentence was revoked. People who knew Taylor said he was quiet, but a hardworking man. He spent some years, about 5 years, kind of working on and off at a used car lot in Ruckersville and doing odd jobs around the area. Taylor was also a suspect in the 2010 disappearance of a 19-year-old woman named Samantha Clark. So let's talk about Samantha Clark's case. In September of 2010, Clark was home with her 12-year-old brother Hunter while her mom Barbara went to work the night shift. When her mother left, Samantha was wearing pajamas and watching TV. Shortly after arriving at work, Barbara's cell phone rang, but she didn't have time to answer it. She had to wait until she was on a break to call back home. And when she did, her son Hunter told her that Samantha had shouted from downstairs she was going out with friends. Samantha had an active social life, but typically didn't go out at night with friends. Barbara was taken aback because it was 1:30 a.m., and Samantha had a subtle fear of the dark and, again, was not really the type to go hang out late at night.
So, again, atypical behavior.
Yeah, her mom said she was the kind of girl that, like, once she settled in for the night, she puts on those PJ pants, the sweatpants. She ain't leaving the house. I totally understand that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was the usual for her to stay home with her 12-year-old brother while her mom worked the night shift.
She didn't return home the next day. Now, at first, her mother thought maybe she'd stayed over at a friend's house because Samantha had a house key with her. Barbara went to sleep on the couch after working all night, expecting that her daughter would be back by the time she woke up. However, Samantha was still not at home when Barbara woke up from this nap. That's when panic set in for Barbara. Even if Samantha did stay over at a friend's house or leave suddenly, she always called home and kept in touch with her mom. When Barbara went to the police station to file a missing persons report, she was informed it had not been 48 hours. They told Barbara since Samantha was an adult, she had the right to leave without warning and do what she pleased.
Say, look, it hasn't been 48 hours. If we were to look into this right now, we have a high likelihood of solving the situation. So we need you to wait till the trail goes cold, people forget important evidence, and then we'll give it a start. And if she is above 18, now, and from a cop, being serious, from a cop's or investigator's perspective, that does change it just a little bit. Because I am an adult, and I do have the right, even if it is my parents, I don't have to inform them all day, every day of where I'm at, right?
Like Fleetwood Mac said, you can go your own way.
Yeah, but so, I mean, in that case, to a degree, I kind of understand, but again, it's one of those things.
But if it's atypical
behavior,
it just seems like it should be taken a bit more seriously.
Well, I mean, sometimes it's so bad. It's like, okay, we found her car in the driveway with the keys in it. It was running. One door was ajar. Her purse was flung out across the driveway, contents spilled. Her wallet and her phone are in the car. What do you think? And they're like,
well, you're probably going to need to wait about 2 more days because, this just looks like maybe she decided that, she wanted to get in a car with somebody else.
The way I see it, she ain't got no car or no money, so she
can't get too far.
She ain't went too far. Okay.
She's walking on them 2 legs that God gave her. I don't know where she's going to go, but it can't be too far away. So you just go back home and you call me in 2 days.
That's right. It's a free country. This is America. And she has the right to walk around with no money or any way to communicate with anybody in an unsafe environment.
You're saying she left her shoes at home. Well, hell, she can walk around barefoot if she wants to.
Yeah. Okay. Sometimes it's to the extreme.
Finally, Barbara was able to file a missing persons report with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. When she returned home, the landline had rung numerous times. So Barbara redialed that number that had been calling, thinking maybe it was Samantha trying to reach her. She was disappointed and even more scared when there was a man on the other end of the phone and not her daughter. And that man was Randy Taylor.
Oh, my God.
He was an older man who ran in the same crowds as Samantha. On the other end of the line, Taylor seemed frantic. He already knew of Samantha's disappearance, which had only recently been discovered, and told Barbara that he was the last person to see her before she went missing. Now, Barbara was immediately suspicious. She knew Samantha was an acquaintance of Taylor's, but didn't consider them to be like friends. So the idea that her daughter would be just hanging out with this guy didn't really make sense to her. And she was also like, how the fuck did he even know that she was missing?
Oh, yeah, because the cops have not even started to investigate it, right?
No.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Red flag.
Yeah.
Very,
red
very
flag.
strange.
Taylor had been the last person to call the house in the early morning hours of September 14th, according to Hunter, right before Samantha left. So it seems like he had called, and that's when Samantha's like, hey, I'm going to go out.
See, I wonder. So Taylor's an older man. You know,
He's in his 40s.
Quite a bit older than
Samantha's 19 at the time.
Right. So it does make me curious, and I'm not going to, disparage her character if maybe she's into some hanging out or, kind of maybe a little bit of.
Well, she's a legal adult at this
She's
point.
a legal adult. She can do what she wants, but maybe she's into, I'm not going to say the drug scene like she's shooting up 3 times a day, but maybe partying, hanging out. Because this is if you have common interests like this oftentimes brings different age groups together. I guess is my point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Drinking, or some of common
smoking
friends, smoking some weed. He can get you some weed.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. It goes all the way.
Well, I think that you are right about that, Dylan, because it seems to me that most 19-year-olds are not going to be hanging out with someone who's old enough to be their father.
No, it certainly could happen, but
when you bring that up, see, that does make perfect sense because of the times that I knew people my age when I was a teenager that were hanging out with grown-ass adults, it was typically because that person could buy them alcohol or that person had weed. You went to that person's house to pick up a bag of shrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like the local neighborhood drug dealer kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. So there were searches and false sightings, but Samantha she's never been seen. Taylor has been interviewed along with other associates, but authorities said no information has surfaced to help find the missing woman. In January of 2021, investigators announced they do believe Samantha Clark is deceased, and the case is now classified as a homicide. Authorities have not elaborated on what changed in the investigation, but have stated that Randy Taylor remains their top person of interest. So with Taylor's denial of knowing Murphy or shopping at Liberty, Lieutenant Mays and the other investigators know he's hiding something. He's confronted with that CCTV footage and finally admits, yeah, I was there. I was at the gas station.
Yeah, and it appears another girl who's missing had a brief conversation with him. He at the very least held the door for her, so you're very close proximity to each other.
They had a brief conversation in the parking lot.
Right, and then it appears that she kind of pulled out directly behind him, like maybe she was following him somewhere.
Yeah.
Again, what reason could that be? And I know Alexis was a wonderful student, great person, and all that, but she's young. Maybe he's like, hey, I got some of that bomb-ass reefer at my house.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Dylan.
Dude, am I solving this case?
So he said that he had met Alexis about a year earlier at a car wash. Taylor claimed he had been smoking the reefers, Dylan.
Devil's lettuce.
Yeah, he was smoking a fat doob. And that Alexis Murphy had commented how it smelled like some really good stuff. So when he saw her on August 3rd, he knew who she was. And Randy Taylor claimed that Alexis wanted to buy some weed from him.
Holy cow.
He was placed on 24-hour surveillance. A search warrant is procured for Taylor's camper. He's removed from the home while a forensic team goes inside. The place is incredibly messy. There's a fingernail embedded into the carpet.
Wow.
A hair extension is found and a diamond stud earring.
No shit.
The blue t-shirt he was seen on the Liberty CCTV footage was found under a sofa containing what looked like bloodstains, and it was kind of balled up and shoved under this couch. There was also a false eyelash stuck inside the shirt.
Wow. So this is all very strange. Because I've got to say, I don't know that this camper, which I knew this camper was messy on the inside, if you can't see the camper for the grass and overgrowth outside, right? And I
This
just
camper smells
this camper smells. It has a very specific smell.
of BO and feet.
Randy and good weed. And this is likely not a place you're going to find women's products. I'm sorry, Randy. I'm going to say it. I don't think you are pulling the ladies down, bud.
Most women are not keen on going back to Randy's overgrown horror movie camper
No, I've been in these places buying the reefers
that
before.
probably smells like Viennese sausages inside.
And these are one of these places you just know the guy, or you know someone who knows the guy, and you finally get the go ahead. You know, it makes everyone happy when they're trying to buy the reefers. When they're like, hey, you can just go to dude. You don't have to call me anymore. He said you can
Cut
come
out
by.
the middleman.
Yeah, and it makes it easier on you. You might get a better deal. You know your buddy's not pinching buds left and right when they get the bag. So now you're happy. You show up at dude's house with some weird ass fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre trailer like this. Or they have a bunch of dogs inside and there's like pee and poop everywhere and it smells really
And
strong.
you don't want to sit on the couch.
And you don't want to sit anywhere.
Or anywhere for that
And
matter.
all you really want to do is run in there, like literally at a full sprint. Throw your money at dude, get the bag of reefer and run out. But you know, you have to be polite.
And
So
you're like, please don't ask me to smoke this with you while I'm in
That's-
this disgusting, nasty camper.
that's the etiquette that gets you every time. He wants to burn one. He wants to bullshit, show you some dumbass movie. Because typically in this setting, I know people out there are like, oh my God, I've been to this place.
I've
The only thing of value
maybe been to this place.
The only thing of value is like a freaking 80-inch TV or some shit, you know, that he's always watching like 90s action movies on or something. And but he always wants you to sit and chill because he, you know, deep down knows that the only reason people come by is because he has the reefers. But he's got the good stuff. So you're going to breathe through your mouth and sit there for 20 or 30 minutes, burn one, and try to get the hell out of there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
not vomit because the whole place smells like hot dog water.
Yeah, so this is
And
lot
butthole.
not a place that I think women are going to be chilling or hanging out or dating a guy that lives in these circumstances.
I would say probably not.
So the discovery of these multiple items, obviously likely belonging to a woman, right, is very, very strange.
Well, Dylan, seeing this kind of evidence was not good for investigators or for Alexis's family. The evidence is sent for DNA testing. The area is searched for a body, but there's piles of garbage and trash everywhere on this property. A trail goes up the mountain behind the camper, and it's a difficult search. The ridge is blanketed, but investigators find nothing. There's no sign of four-wheeler tracks or anything like that. And this is an area, it's steep, it's treacherous, rugged. I mean, it's just like a roughed out trail, but not really like a trail, you know what I mean? So they're trying to search this piece of property as much as they can. It's overgrown. Just not a good place to try to find a body.
No, it sounds like the worst place, and it sounds like the perfect place to hide a body.
Well, law enforcement is using canines that sniff out a specific glue for cell phones.
Wow.
The dogs are brought to Taylor's property and camper. The dogs are smelling some kind of scent, and about 70 feet from the camper, the phone is found in some brush. It is shattered and appears as though someone has tried to take out the battery.
Wow, you know, dogs are amazing, and they're trained to smell all these different things: money, drugs, dead bodies, all these various scents. Fear. Some of them are trained to key on the fear scent. But I'd never in my wildest dreams contemplated them being trained to specifically smell the glue in a cell phone So you could locate a cell phone in an area like this.
Wizardry. It's
That is incredible.
magic.
They can detect cancers in some instances.
Finding the iPhone definitely implicates Randy Taylor in Alexis's disappearance. He's arrested on August 9th and charged with her abduction. The next morning, investigators released more information about Taylor's arrest at his home in the 10,000 block of Thomas Nelson Highway. Taylor's property, just across from Cannery Loop, is swarmed by officials, and they take his truck into custody. After the arrest, Mays has to inform the Murphy family that they don't think Alexis is still alive, and they want to go forward with a murder charge against Randy Taylor. The Murphy family had to agree with the evidence regarding Alexis. As difficult as it was, the family realized chances were slim to none that she was still alive. So, before I get into talking further about the trial, Randy Taylor implicates another man, a guy named Damien.
Oh.
Says he did it. Like, oh, they came and bought weed, but then she left with him, and I don't know what happened. But when they investigate, and I didn't want to talk too much about it because, I mean, it's one of those leads that just, it doesn't pan out because he didn't fucking kill her. Damien was in the area, staying in a hotel, that kind of thing, but had a total alibi and was not involved from what investigators could determine.
Very easily to determine that he was not involved in any way.
Exactly.
Solid alibi, witnesses, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he was like in town with his girlfriend, had stayed in a hotel. I mean, there was just nothing to implicate this guy.
Well, in my book, that's another red flag for Mr. Taylor, implicating someone who obviously had nothing to do with it, which means you're lying to us.
Exactly. The Murphy family had to agree with the evidence regarding Alexis, as I mentioned. I mean, they're just heartbroken at this point. And as the case heads to trial, law enforcement offered Taylor a deal. If he would lead them to Alexis's remains, they would give him 20 years in prison. Taylor counters that if they will agree to 10 years, he will tell them.
Oh, so if they plea him down to a 10-year sentence, he will tell them where her body's at?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Randy Taylor is denied bond, and his case is set to go before a grand jury on September 24th. Taylor is indicted by the grand jury, and he pleads not guilty, and his trial date is set for February 3rd of 2014. The Commonwealth's attorney announces plans to call 50 witnesses to the stand. The judge sets aside 2 weeks for the jury trial. Law enforcement asks hunters and hikers to be on the lookout for anything unusual in the area, even just like a piece of clothing, an earring, maybe a woman's shoe, like anything that might lead to the discovery of Alexis Murphy's body. Taylor's case was brought to trial on May 1st of 2014. Jury selection took about 8 hours to complete, and the trial was presided over by Judge Michael Gamble. Interestingly enough, Dylan, one of our patrons was the first juror.
Wow.
On this case.
Hard to believe.
And I wanted to set aside some time to speak with her about this case, but my schedule just was crazy this week, and I didn't get around to it.
Well, maybe we can do that in the near future, but I think
I thought about that.
That is incredible.
That maybe we can get her on the phone, and we can talk about this case. Now, Judge Gamble issued a gag order to prevent law enforcement officials, lawyers, and their employees from speaking publicly about the case. Taylor pled not guilty to the charges of murder, stating that while Murphy had been in his camper, she arrived with this other man, as I mentioned before, Damian Brown, in order to buy some marijuana, and that the two had left together. However, Lieutenant Mays had already gone to Alabama to interview Damian Brown shortly after Taylor's arrest. Brown had been in the area with his girlfriend, had a solid alibi, and was miles away from where Alexis Murphy had gone missing. So he was not considered a viable suspect by Mays at all. And I already mentioned that, but thought I would touch on it again. Taylor's lawyer, Michael Hallahan, argued that law enforcement did not fully investigate his claim and focused predominantly on Taylor, despite Damian Brown leaving the state shortly after Alexis Murphy disappeared. Hallahan said the evidence, like the hair extension, had been planted by law enforcement.
Oh, yeah, because they're just out to get him, you know?
Evidence brought against Taylor included testimony from the cashier at the gas station, the bloody T-shirt they found under his sofa, and evidence pulled from Taylor's camper, which included that strand of hair, like the hair extension, that torn fingernail, and that diamond earring stud. Hallahan had made a pretrial attempt to suppress statements and the evidence found via search warrants, but that was denied.
Now, in your research, I know it may not have specified, was that, did it say whether or not that was a fake fingernail, or if that was an actual fingernail ripped out of the socket?
I'm not sure, but it sounds like it was an actual fingernail.
Oh my God. See, a fake nail can end up in the floor.
I didn't see anything indicating that it was like an acrylic nail
Right.
or like a gel or solar or anything like that. So it does appear that it was a real piece of her fingernail.
Okay, that's crazy because, a fake nail can end up in the floor. It can pop off. It can break, very easily sometimes. I've seen even when you get yours done by a professional, if they go too thin,
They can break.
they're brittle. But just a sizable chunk of your fingernail, that does not come off easily.
No.
Right? So that's a very scary piece of evidence right there.
Seeing the T-shirt covered in blood was a turning point. The DNA testing revealed it was in fact Alexis's blood and saliva, and there were other fluids present. The hair extension contained her DNA as well. Now, Randy's DNA was found on that hair extension also. The prosecution painted the picture of a very violent attack because we all know those hair extensions are woven or like sewn in. Sometimes they're glued into the hair. They don't just come out unless there's some kind of struggle. They are attached to your hair, to your head.
They don't typically come out unless you want them to come out and someone takes them out.
Right. You would have to pull pretty hard to get one of those sewn hair extensions ripped out. Plus, I'm imagining that's pretty painful. Your daughter has had those extensions.
Yeah, it's very long ones.
And
they're heavy.
Super long braids. And when she's had those done, they put those right at her scalp.
Yeah,
with
they
her
do.
hair. So it's like her hair's braided into it. It's a lot, right? So can you imagine that just being ripped out of your scalp?
No, I couldn't imagine even half of my fingernail ripping off either.
Fucking painful.
Very painful.
On May 8th, Taylor was found guilty on the charges of first-degree murder in the commission of an abduction and abduction with intent to defile in connection with the disappearance of Alexis Murphy. During the sentencing, Taylor tried to bargain for a lesser sentence. He claimed, even at sentencing, that a third person had been involved.
Well, I thought this was the investigators or the DA's move right here, is denying, when he offered to give up her remains for a plea deal, a rather light one in my opinion, given the circumstances. That once they got him sentenced, because they feel like they had strong evidence. This is pretty good evidence.
Yeah, it totally is.
This isn't circumstantial.
No.
This is dead on. It checks out with the DNA. You got him basically on film, one of the last known people to make contact with her.
You have a bloody T-shirt?
A bloody T-shirt, a fingernail, and a likely ripped out hair extension. And all this checks out, connected back to Alexis. And then given the testimony of the clerk, hey, he talked to her. I know he was talking to her, blah, blah, blah. So this is a pretty good case. And then once they reach the sentencing phase, maybe then he'll use that as some kind of a bargaining chip to get a lighter sentence. And I certainly, of course, that's all on the family, whatever they want to do in that circumstance. And I respect anything they do, because getting the remains back in a situation like this is very, very important for closure and just to have her home and put her somewhere to rest. So, yeah, I'm surprised he didn't actually throw that out on the table again.
On July 23rd of 2014, Randy Taylor was given 2 life sentences, which are being served at the Red Onion Prison.
Well, that is a damn good sentence.
And I like that it's called the Red Onion Prison, because it just sounds like a real hard place to be.
Well, yeah, because all those guys there stink because they're assholes.
Okay.
Yeah, but
In October of 2014, shortly after the remains of Hannah Graham were discovered, Taylor requested that authorities perform a DNA test on Jesse Matthews. And he is a serial killer in Virginia. Hold your seats. He might come up again.
Man, this is just
Soon.
like in the New England region we just left. You had all this activity in one area. It's rather crazy.
Well, Taylor's lawyer alleged that because Matthews had been linked to several disappearances, including that of Morgan Harrington and Hannah Graham, that he could have also been responsible for Alexis Murphy's disappearance. Hallahan also requested a social media analysis to see if Alexis Murphy had ever contacted Jesse Matthew via any of her social media accounts. Nelson County Commonwealth's attorney, Anthony Martin, remarked that there was nothing to tie these two cases together, but went ahead and ran those tests, which ruled out Jesse Matthew as a suspect, like he knew it would. In December of that same year, Taylor filed an appeal claiming that he did not receive a fair trial and that he received poor representation from Hallahan. But his appeal was denied in May of 2015, and a second appeal was also filed with the Supreme Court of Virginia. It was denied in February of 2016. One of the biggest mysteries remains how Randy Taylor was able to get Alexis Murphy to follow him back to the camper. Lieutenant Mays believes it was in fact a drug deal gone wrong, that she had followed him back in order to buy some marijuana, but her family doesn't believe this, saying she could have bought weed from just about anybody if she had wanted to get some.
You know what? Weed sells itself. If you know some people that has been, getting weed from this guy and he's got the good stuff. I mean, there's an easy motivation there that certainly doesn't make Alexis a bad person. It's just the way it works. When you're especially dealing in the black market without any commercials or advertising or merchants or any kind of a guarantee.
This is why it should be legal and dispensaries should be readily available.
Well, that's actually a very good point. It takes, especially a lot of young people, typically get their first exposure to partying, hanging out with maybe a little bit of beer or a marijuana, right? Marijuana. So, yes, certainly.
So it takes out that sketchy element of having to go to the weed man's camper.
The stinky weed man's camper with the
creepy.
The creepy eyes.
Thinks that you owe him something more than just some money because he's hooking you up with a J.
Well, that's the same thing. You might buy from him a few times, and then he thinks, and you're being. I mean, we do this too. You're nicer to this guy
you really want to be
than you normally would be if he didn't have the good ass weed.
Weird and gross.
Right. And so then he makes a move, and of course you're like, yeah, as if, and then that pisses him off. And now you're in this weird fucking location with the guy by yourself.
Yeah. The Nelson County Sheriff's Office announced on February 17th of 2021 the remains of Alexis Murphy were found on December 3rd of 2020 in Lovingston along Route 29 near Stage Bridge Road. Investigators have not revealed how or what led them to that location. In this case, no one gave up. The efforts of the Murphy family, along with friends, law enforcement, and the community, led to her discovery, and officials have no doubt the right person is behind bars.
Okay. So does that possibly mean that Mr. Randy Taylor could be the the Route 29 stalker killer?
I mean, at this point, I wouldn't rule it out.
I mean, we have him. We have Daryl Rice, who was active in the area and convicted of convicted of just attacking that woman, and she did manage to get away. And that just disgusts me. So you can kidnap, attack, sexually assault a person, and then get a plea deal, with the witness. You have the witness who lived and injured herself significantly getting away from you and then identified you as her attacker later on. So he gets a plea deal and gets 11 months. And we know how the system works. He likely didn't even do 11 months, right? He might have did 70% of that. And there he's right back out again,
It's disgusting.
And I just don't understand.
It's a broken system.
We have a lot of prisons.
Not in place to keep women or children safe. And we know this. We talk about it just about every fucking episode.
No, it's not in place to keep women, children, or society in general safe. It is a for-profit system that has, and then they decided to fill it up with small-time users and drug offenders, non-violent, I might add, typically. And I just don't understand. We have all these prisons with all these cells, that have been built around the country over the years. There's plenty of room for pieces of shit like Daryl Rice or someone like Randy Taylor to be the first time they attack someone to be, if they're convicted in court, to get a lengthy sentence. But, they can add mandatory minimums across the board on drug offenses, right?
Oh, but we can't do that for
But you can't do it for sexual children predators, sexual predators, violent predators of any type, or violent crimes, even, armed robbery, home invasions, which are very scary. We talk about all the time. These are where the mandatory minimum sentencing should be. In all cases.
Amen. Don't shout the man down.
For the back pew.
From what I understand, as I mentioned before, Randy Taylor is a top suspect in the Samantha Clark disappearance. And it seems investigators are still actively trying to work that case. And there have been rumors that they're confident they will be able to bring charges against Taylor in the near future.
Well, that's wonderful because they're still actively, pursuing this open case of the Route 29 killer. As recently as March 17th, they put out an article stating Virginia authorities that they were still working the case. It was a cold case, but there were people who had the responsibility of looking into it, and that they hoped it led to more charges, more victims, stories being told. Or, but also I'm afraid when you get in a case like Randy Taylor, where he's already gotten 2 life sentences, he is put away. Sometimes, unfortunately, because it is about resources and money, even though they know that he likely was connected to these other victims, well, he's already in jail and he's going to stay there. I mean, look what they did with Wayne Williams, right? He was found guilty of a couple of the cases,
but they just went ahead and
but none of the children
of the Atlanta child murder.
I mean, tens of cases of the children, none of them found guilty of none of those, but then they closed all those cases after Mr. Williams was found guilty in the death, I think, of the 2 oldest gentlemen that were in the group.
Well, now, recently, Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, has sent DNA off to be tested in those Atlanta child murders that you're mentioning, Dylan. And I can't wait until we get some results back.
And I'm sorry, I know it costs money, but I think every victim deserves the process of the trial unless the family specifically says we don't want to go through this. And I think in that case, in Atlanta, very few of the families would have said that because they were held back so long in getting what they considered justice or even getting someone to help them actively. So I think you spend the fucking money. I don't care if it's, paid for at the federal level for each state to have this fund to make sure in cases like this that every trial they go through it, they keep convicting that person, keep giving that closure to families over and over again until no one's left to give closure to. We can send billions everywhere else, but it's never in cases like this,
I understand.
There's all these rape
I
kits.
agree with you.
I mean, don't get me started. All these rape kits around the country.
We can fund wars on 2 or 3 fronts and send foreign aid, but we can't take care of our own.
If every rape kit between, let's say 5 years, because it is such a backlog, it's insane. You can't even wrap your head around it, was to be tested with the most modern forensic and DNA technology, countless, and then the access to familial DNA and all these new things that are just really changing a lot of these cold cases and all that. Oh my God, you could bring closure and you could possibly clean, more and more monsters off the street with, if you were to set a goal to test every kit by, 5 years from now.
You are filled with such passion right now. I love it.
Man,
you're giving us a fiery sermon.
It disgusts me.
Well, it should. Everyone should be disgusted. We should all be outraged about this shit.
For so many reasons.
Especially these rape kits that sit on the shelves.
Oh, my God.
I mean, we as a nation are accepting this when we should be like, fuck no, this is our top priority. And when politicians make promises, oh, we'll get through this backlog, and they're not delivering on it, get
Then
them
you're
out of
gone.
office.
And I vote someone else in, and I tell them my priority issue is the rape kits.
People should be putting pressure on their local politicians, on the local police departments, on the state agencies that do these tests, the governor. I mean,
Well, I will climb down off my little teeny soapbox because I have teeny feet. But we were saying
you're pretty heavy for that teeny tiny soapbox.
it's a metal soapbox.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not wooden.
It's durable.
It's very durable.
American steel.
It's made out of one of the modern composite plastics that's known to hold heavy
Oh,
weights.
okay, I thought maybe it was just hardcore American steel.
We said the other day we were talking amongst ourselves, as we're wont to do when we're in each other's company. And we just said, and this is in a nutshell, and this is not about politics, but used to, the standard was if I liked your platform, no matter if you're a Republican or Democrat, right? The polarization in this country is what's destroying us. It's what's really rotting us. I would vote for you. I'd say, I agree with what you say. I would vote for you. And you would promise to do what you said, or at least try.
You would deliver.
You would deliver. And if you
on those
didn't,
promises.
I voted you out the next time. I voted against you.
And I wouldn't let you keep lying to me.
And I would never allow you to lie
talking
directly.
out both sides of your friggin' mouth.
Exactly. And I would never just vote for you because of a letter beside your name.
No.
I would look at your platform, I would look at your values and see how closely they align with my own. Damn, I tell you what, we're going to start more podcasts because I feel like I need to talk about some stuff.
You need a political podcast?
Yes.
Or a common sense podcast?
So let's just call it What the Fuck.
Okay, so resources for today's episode, Dylan. I watched the show Final Moments, which was an Oxygen produced show,
They do a good job over there.
and various newspaper reports. Because this was a recent trial, there are tons and tons of newspaper and TV news reports. So
These
I
were
was-
front page articles.
Yeah, so I was able to compile a ton of information from these various newspapers. But this has been the story of Alexis Murphy, her case. I'm very glad her family is finally able to get some closure and that they were able to find her remains.
I am
Because
as well.
that has to be, I mean, it's got to be incredibly painful to lose a child in this way, but then not knowing where they are.
Yeah, you lost your baby and then you get your baby back.
Yeah.
And you can keep, have them there and then have them somewhere where you can go visit, and talk to them. Very important to many people, most people. It's very sad. And okay, can I stop the presses for 1 second? Right quick, I would like
Do
to
it.
congratulate my co-host partner, not our sponsor, Heather, of today's, not the patron, Heather, but my co-host and my wife,
Your wife.
my partner in this life.
Yes.
I would like to congratulate you on 2 back-to-back record-setting months on downloads for Mountain Murders.
Thank you.
And I would also like to thank each and every single listener out there, because without you, none of this would have been possible. We're going on 4 years now, which is amazing to us.
We're heading to 4.
Yeah, we're heading to 4.
We're at like 3.5 years of podcasting.
250 plus episodes. We have multiple, maybe multiple types, multiple episodes a week, and it's not easy. And I'd like to thank you, Heather, and I'd like to thank all the listeners, and we hope you keep tuning in, because we love this. And this is the only way you make it to the 250 episodes plus mark. And this is the reason sometimes our episodes run an hour and a half, 2 hours, hour 48. It's because Heather is not going to shortchange the listeners. Now, she looked me dead in my eye and said, I don't care how long it takes.
I said, bitch.
She said, bitch. She said, I don't care how long it takes. When I find the info, sometimes there's a little, sometimes there's a lot. The story kind of shows itself to you, and you're going to report it in that way. Some podcasts have a strict time limit, and, or some podcasts would take Heather's stories, because these are 30, 40, 50-page scripts, and they would make 3 or 4 part episodes out of them. I have no doubt about that. But Heather loves to tell the story. She loves to tell it in one episode. So that's why we have very few.
I feel like unless it is such a big story that we have to break it down because we can't do a 4-hour episode, I know that I don't like being left on a cliffhanger.
Nope.
I need resolution to a case, so that's why we'll just go ahead and put in the work, make it an hour and a half.
Yeah, and we do that, and
We
it's
an hour
because
and 42 hours, whatever we have to do.
we really enjoy it. We really enjoy doing this with you guys, and she enjoys doing it for you, with you all, should I say. And yeah, and we always think about the listener experience. That's why we don't have commercials every 10 minutes.
It's true.
If we put a commercial every 10 or 15 minutes, especially on these extra long episodes, guess what? We could make some more ad revenue, but we don't, because we are overly, maybe some might say overly, but I say it's the right thing to do, concerned with the listener experience.
It's true. I don't want to listen to
I don't like that.
tons of commercials, so I'm not going to subject our listeners to that either. If you have any thoughts, feedback, maybe you have a case suggestion, just want to drop us a line, got a great listener story, you can always email us, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. Find us on all social media platforms.
Yep, come
We're
check out the
on
talk.
Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Well, what else, Dylan? If you want more content, of course, there's patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast.
Yes, that's a great way for just as little as $1 a month to support the podcast. And you can also access our Discord chat, which is so much fun. It's more like friends and family over there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dylan.
And thank everyone. And we're going to get out of here, get rested up,
I appreciate your energy.
get ready for our midweek. Well, you've reinvigorated me.
You're all fired up on a Sunday, feeling frisky.
You've told me that if we're going to continue doing this, we got to, it's evolve. It's got to evolve. It's got to change. It's got to get better for the listeners. And I've taken that to heart after hundreds of episodes and years.
Okay.
And I take it serious, but no, I love it. We love it, and we want to keep doing it. And we have so many ideas of other things to try.
Dylan is proof men are trainable.
It's true. After years.
It may take some years, but with positive reinforcement and some treats,
the treats.
you can eventually train them.
She may give our little doggy a little pepperoni treat when he comes in, and after peeing, she will give me a tall boy beer.
You know, just speaking on our little dog.
After I pee.
Okay. I will go buy expensive dog treats, and he does not want those. He wants the cheapest, crappiest treat. He wants those pepperonis.
From the dollar store.
Yeah, that I just picked up one day. But then I can buy him, like, some charcuterie flavored treats from, like, a Whole Foods. Like, some expensive dog treat, and he totally snubs it.
I love this guy.
So our dog is a little like us, Dylan. He's a little trashy.
He's after my own heart. Instead of the signature, deli sandwich, maybe he just wants a fried bologna and cheese.
Maybe he does.
All right. Thank everyone, and we will catch you in the midweek.